Hi, everyone. Welcome, Cumberland County teachers. I hope this recording finds you well, and we are going to get started right now. So, I guess by now, some of you may know me. um, I have the privilege of working with Carmen Villalobos almost every summer for the past few summers to do a little PD for you guys and share some things with you. But if you don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Carmen Scoggins, and I am a Spanish teacher in beautiful Boone, North Carolina. I teach Spanish all day, usually levels 1 and 3 at Watauga High School. And then I run over to Appalachian State University where I co-teach the World Language Methodology course for future language teachers. So I get to live in both worlds and it's wonderful. And I just finished my 28th year in the classroom, and I have done the full gamut. I did K through 8 Spanish for 9 years. I've been at the high school for 19 years and at ASU for 19 years as well. So I've done a lot of stuff. I'm past president of Flank, past president of SCOLT. So I've been around the block for a while. And that is one reason I was interested in tackling this topic of using social media with students, because I don't know about you guys, but the older I get, the younger my students seem to get, and I feel super old. I can't keep up with their lingo anymore. The slang stuff, when I finally learn how to say it, it's outdated. So this little session, again, if you saw me present this at the Flank Spring Conference, it was virtual. Even if you've seen me do some of this before, hopefully you'll get some ideas and maybe it'll rejuvenate you a little bit. So we're going to get started with social media, like making languages social. Here is my contact information. Of course, you can find me on Twitter, email me anytime, literally anytime during the school year, not just over the summer, carmenscoggins@gmail.com. And this is our tiny URL for today. It's just social media summer. So we're going to get started. Okay, so these are our learning targets. I can brainstorm ways to use social media without actually using social media. What's that mean? I don't know. I can use actual social media sites to find authentic resources. And finally, I can motivate my students by designing activities that incorporate social media. So after you view this presentation, I will have created a few different activities you can choose from to try to build your portfolio a little bit, and to try to have some ideas, some concrete ideas for you to start the school year with in August. I know we don't want to talk about going back to school in August, but the thing is, it's already July and August will be here before we know it. So we might as well get our brains in gear. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to do a little bit of an overview like I normally do, some background as to sort of how my brain works and why I chose this topic. So Gen Z, that's the level, that's the generation of the learner that we're teaching right now currently. Maybe if you're teaching elementary school, you're teaching the next generation, which is even younger, but most of us are probably teaching the Gen Z kids. So how do you frighten this new generation? Put them in a room with a rotary phone, an analog watch, and a TV with no remote, add rabbit ears for fun, and then leave directions for use in cursive, right? These kids don't know the kind of world that we grew up with. We grew up with 8-track tapes and cassette tapes and those reel-to-reel movies. When we wanted to show something in class, we had to go get the projector, right? Or roll the TV down the hall to show a VHS tape and pray that the TV didn't fall off on the way to the classroom. So we've done it all. Actually, our generation, most of us are probably Gen Xers, maybe some baby boomers out there, or even millennials, but most of our generation, we've had to evolve with technology. And the generation we're teaching has just grown up with the technology all around them. So it's been a little bit of a different journey for them. So this is an infographic that my friend and colleague, Savannah Wilson, and I made, and I just want to share with you. Let me do that one more time. I just want to share with you some information that we got about Gen Z students. And again, why I would broach the topic of using social media with this generation. So they spend about 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen. Now we know that when COVID was hit, and then when we had to teach remotely and everything, yes, that was going to be true, but this is like a normal life for them. They're on about 5 screens per day. This is the thing that freaks me out the most. Let me make it bigger. They have an 8-second attention span. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom, that's it. Okay, now that could be extreme because obviously it's probably a little bit longer, but wow. So we cannot teach the way we used to teach our language learners because things just don't process the same way in their brains. And I blame technology for that. But the good news for us, they are independent, they're learner centric. So honestly, we need to take the pressure off of us, take the idea that we know it all and we've got it all under control, because it really should be focused on the students, on the learners. They're globally minded, they're very visual, and they're tech savvy. Okay. And they view us, the teachers, as facilitators, which is good. Again, a lot of this that I'm going to talk to you about today, and a lot of what I talk about in general, is you doing a lot of front loading, and then it's the students' turn to do the actual work, which is great. They crave feedback. Now, we know as educators, this is our favorite part, right? Giving feedback. No. Grading and giving feedback are the hardest things we do. I love the planning part. I love the teaching part. I love the creative part of what are we going to do today in the classroom. What I don't like is how time consuming it is to grade an IPA when we know that it consists of all the modes of communication. You're sitting there with 90 students and you got to do 90 times 3. I mean, that's just a lot. But feedback is important. They want to be challenged. They need to be challenged. They want to be heard and seen. So my go-to is just talk to your students, especially when it comes to social media, and I'll give you some ideas on that in a minute. They recognize authenticity. So don't try to be something you're not. If what I say today doesn't really jive with your style, it's okay. Maybe 1 or 2 things that I say will fit something that you can do in the upcoming school year, but don't feel a lot of pressure to do everything that I do. I've designed some of these things over time, so it's not like I just jumped into it. And they prefer, this is the most important thing on this infographic, I think, they prefer bite-sized learning. Again, we cannot teach in an analog way in a digital world, and we've got to give kids quick little bites of information so that it's, again, I blame TikTok, I blame all the things that are fast, all the little YouTube videos that they watch, or mostly TikTok, because they're about, no, it's no wonder they have an 8-second attention span, because that's what they're used to. They're used to getting in and getting out. They're used to having access to all kinds of notifications, information, text, news, weather, right at their fingertips without even having to process very much. So the more, I'm not saying we have to cater to that every single day, every single minute of the day for them, but the more we can sort of begin to align chunking our lessons to fitting a quicker time frame, I really do think they seem to process the information a little bit better because it just moves faster. So let's go back to the presentation. Okay. Slowly but surely. Okay, great. So a couple of things too. I'll tell you, in Watauga County, there are only 6 world language teachers. We just had to hire a new Spanish teacher because our Spanish program has grown so much, and that is wonderful. But we only have 1 French teacher, and she does it all, and I don't see how she does it. But I don't know what languages you guys teach. Of course, my examples are going to be in Spanish, but hopefully you'll be able to correlate it to what you teach. But last year, at the end of 2021, I'm department chair, and I said, you know what, guys, things are crazy and chaotic. Let's keep the crazy going for a while, because we had come through COVID, we had come through teaching remotely, teaching face-to-face, teaching half the school at a time, or whatever, teaching with masks, teaching without masks. So I said, why don't we stay wild for a while? And so we took our old unit themes and revamped them. And so we brought our 6 unit themes down to 4. It seemed more manageable. We teach on a semester block situation. And so we did that. We really streamlined levels 1 and 2, and we're working on the upper levels as we go through this school year. We can only do like 2 levels at a time because it was a lot. We were literally building the plane as we were flying it, which was okay. It was a rough fall, but we made it through. And now we're beginning to tweak things. But one of the things we did do is, you know, you guys have a unit probably where students are doing adjectives and they're talking about themselves and whatever. We have that same unit. We call it mi identidad now, my identity. And instead of just being able to talk about myself and my friends, this is where we put in, we call it a circle of influence. So we talk about a little bit about family. We talk a little bit about people we know at school, coaches, things like that. We broaden those themes out so that we spiral the vocab as we go through the 4 units over and over and over again, and the structures, to be fair. And that has worked so beautifully for us. So we don't just do a separate family and house unit. We don't just do a school unit. It sort of gets embedded in all the themes that we chose to do. And I'm talking about level 1 only right now, but our level 2 is the same way. So one of the things we did, since we're doing a unit about my identity, is to begin to talk more specifically about digital responsibility and digital identity. And the way we did this, since we're getting into using social media, and that can be scary for some parents, for students, and for school districts, and for teachers. So we just wanted to make sure our students were aware of some of the pitfalls of just putting all your information out on the internet or searching for things. Or, we talked a little bit about cyberbullying and all that stuff in the target language, because we used authentic resources. You'll hear me talk a lot about authentic resources. And so this presentation, again, I didn't say this before, but anytime you see my little Bitmoji finger, the presentation or whatever is clickable and you can have access to it. You can tweak it. You can use it as it is, whatever you need. If for some reason it's not open or I didn't set the permissions right, just email me and I'm happy to share any of this with you. So this presentation, I'm not going to take the time to open it now, but it simply has maybe 5 infographics about digital responsibility and digital identity. And then we would have our students answer questions. Very often we do this in English just because we're checking for understanding. And sometimes if you ask a question in the target language, then the students are just going to search for that little bit in the infographic or the reading or whatever you're having them use. And then they're going to write that down, and it's the right answer, but that doesn't necessarily mean they understand it. So with beginning learners like this, we typically ask for them to look for cognates. What do you recognize? What do you think the general message is? And so you'd be surprised at what they're able to get from these beautiful, authentic resources that were created by native speakers for native speakers. And you can find them in any language. And I'll give you some pointers about that in a little bit. So again, we are now broadening out that, can I talk about myself? Yo soy baja. Yes, I am. But what is my digital responsibility? So we added that as we got into using more social media this year. Think of how you use social media, okay? What is your go-to tool? Now, I would say for me, it's probably Facebook, because that's more of my generation. Our students really aren't on Facebook, as you probably know. They're on Instagram or Snapchat or definitely TikTok. But it doesn't mean that the tools that are out there for everyone to use, they might inspire what we can do in the classroom. Whether we're using the actual tool, which I don't use a lot with students, and I'll explain how I get around that. That's why this is called social media like. Yeah, it just sets it up really well. But think about what you use and how you can use it in the classroom. Okay. And this is still a little bit of background, so bear with me. When you go on Facebook or Meta or whatever it's called now, the more you interact with other people's posts and your own posts, the more people are going to see it, right? So if you think about that idea, the more things you do, we know that repetition is really important in a language classroom, because kids are not going to get everything they need in one shot. Yeah, I wish it were that easy, but we know we have to recycle, we have to reuse, especially when learning another language. I tell my students that the Spanish classroom or the language classroom is not like any other class in the building. It is not like they can go and just memorize a bunch of things, take an assessment on it, and then forget it, because they need to drag all that stuff with them throughout the whole semester. And you know that's true. So think about that, and think about how you interact on Facebook. When we're chatting with our friends on Facebook, or when I'm commenting on someone's trip to wherever in the world that I'm not lucky enough to go on, I am interpersonally communicating with them, right? Because I wrote something back to them, they're going to write something back, possibly, right? But so think about that. How do the interpersonal activities you do with students also support presentational communication? Okay, again, this is like bigger picture. We're going to get to some specifics in a minute. And how can formative and even informal conversation better prepare our students for summative presentations. So think about that when you think about the simple interaction that happens on Facebook. How could you leverage that in the classroom? How could you have that give and take? And how can that become more presentational? And how can that constant practice lead to a more polished presentation? Same thing, every social media that you're on, whatever you search for or you look for, obviously all those organizations are getting our data. And so whatever TikToks I watch the most, those are going to populate first. Okay. Same thing with ads. So I like specific things. I might click on an ad for a vitamin or a lotion or something, and then that's going to come up a lot because they're tracking what we're doing. So again, I ask you to think bigger and say, how could you leverage student interests in what you're doing in the classroom? Always go back to the students. Always ask them for advice, for suggestions. Teaching today's learner means learning to speak their language, so to speak, and getting to know them and what drives them, what motivates them, the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and the idea of a growth mindset, and just really knowing our students so that we know how to sell kind of what we are doing in the classroom. And then finally, sometimes we use social media. I'm not going to say I do it all the time, but as a way to not stalk, because that sounds negative, but like we're lurking. And that's kind of how I use Twitter. I'll read what people have written, and even Instagram. I'm not a huge Instagram user, and I know our students are more on Instagram than they are certain other platforms, but it's just not one that I go to for some reason. I don't know why, but some people never comment, some people never comment or post. That's right. But that doesn't mean they're not getting something out of it, right? So it's fascinating to kind of know what's happening with your friends' lives, or what's happening in the world, or what's happening in whatever conference is going on that you're not able to attend. You don't necessarily have to say anything to get something out of it. And so all those interpretive activities that we do in the classroom, that's exactly what's happening for our students. And we know that those interpretive skills, we develop them first. And I just spent some time this weekend with my niece and nephew. They're 4 months old and well, respectively 2 years old and 4 months old. And my 2-year-old niece is starting to finally produce language, of course, but she's taking it all in. Like she hears tone, she's understanding intonation, and then she repeats it. So our beginning language learners are the exact same way. So all those interpretive activities we're doing, they're taking it all in. And when they're finally ready, they're going to produce something for us, right? And it might not be right, it might be kind of messed up, but at least they're finally ready to take the chance. So all those things we do, don't think, oh man, they need to be speaking more. Yes, they need to be speaking a lot, but there is a lot of value in just lurking with the language before they're ready to produce. So I just wanted to give you that as sort of a background. And we're in the best position possible because our classroom is, again, I already just said this, it's not like any other classroom in the building. We foster those 21st century skills, communication, and how to interact with people that a lot of classrooms are still sit and get, and our classrooms are not like that. They are lively. You come down the hall and you hear a lot of noise and chaos, and all that's really beautiful because that means kids are interacting with one another. So think about, again, how social media works. So interpersonal, you might say they're chatting or mentioning somebody or DMing, they're sending me a direct message. Interpretive, maybe I'm reading what somebody posts and I just like it because I understand the message. That's what our kids are doing with interpretive. I favorite something, I share something, I repost because I don't have to comment on it. I might not have the language to comment yet, but I can still share it because I understand what's going on. Presentational, post, I go live, right? Or I retweet or repost. And then interculturality, I create stories, tag people, follow people. So there's a lot of things that we're already doing in the language classroom that really supports the idea of social media. And that's one reason I found this works so well with students. This is speaking student because they understand social media, and without having to say, oh, this is social media, they get it. They know what I'm doing. All right, so let's get into the meat of this. Now, I call this a choice board, but it's really not. I don't know if you should even call it a choice board. It's just things to consider. Okay, as I go through this presentation with you for the next half hour or so, take a look at these things on the sides and keep them in mind, okay? Take notes. Again, like I said, at the end, you're gonna have a chance to build your own sort of social media portfolio, things that might work with your students. And so I really want you to keep these things in mind. Interpretive versus presentational, and I should add versus interpersonal. How could you use these to support the modes of communication? Thinking of how these tools help us use grammar and context instead of just isolated verb charts. Student interests. What do they even want to learn about? Is the activity easy, or is this going to really complicate things? Because if anyone's going to make anything more difficult in life, it's going to be me. That's how I roll. I don't mean to do it, but it always seems to work out that way. So think of how easy this is going to be for you. Is it relevant? Again, we're going to talk a lot about authentic text, as I mentioned, and you can't change the text because you didn't write it. You can't change it, but it's how you're going to use it that you can change. So change the task and not the text. Learning target support. Does it even support what you're trying to do for the unit, the lesson, the day, whatever? Does it support differentiation? Could you use this to maybe ask a set of questions to these students about the infographic or whatever versus these students that could get some other questions? And then what's your level of comfort? Because if you don't feel comfortable, I suggest you not try something you're not comfortable with. Now, I am a person who takes a lot of risks. I'm the kind of person that just puts myself out there. If I make a mistake, I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna move on. But that's just me. That might not be your style. So again, you choose something today that I say that helps you or supports stuff you're already doing. Don't make it harder. And I suggest you start small. Okay. One of the things that we did as we added these, or as we begin to redesign our themes, is that you can see these are verbs, obviously, and without them knowing very much about any of these words, they were already able to create some sentences about social media. So I just started really small, like what social media tools do you use? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? You could do class polls. And again, you could do all this in the target language. And then they could say things like, me gusta mirar videos en TikTok. Okay, simple sentence, stuff they know. They can use these words, and it doesn't take them long to embed these words into their vocabulary because it just becomes so second nature. So this is kind of how we started as a precursor to actually trying to emulate using social media without actually using social media. And again, I'm going to explain that in a second. So these, again, my suggestion to you is pace yourself. Don't get overwhelmed by this, okay? I usually say a lot in my presentations, and some of you are like, wow, that's so much, I can't do it all. Don't do it all. Choose one thing that you want to do and do that first. Okay, so these are my go-to social media tools I use with students. Now, I put Facebook on here, but I don't use Facebook with students. Now, in the past I have, when Facebook was new and I wanted to be that trending teacher, I used, like Facebook on paper is how we did it, so we could post on each other's walls and all that stuff. But I use Facebook for me to stay in touch with family and friends, to post things that I want to celebrate, and just share. And I keep it really light on Facebook. We're always warned at the beginning faculty meeting, be careful what you put out there on social media. And it is true. We do have to be careful because it is public. And so I try to keep everything I do, and I try to live my life that way too. I try to be upbeat as much as possible because goodness knows life is hard enough. But so we're not going to talk about using Facebook with students, but we are going to talk about Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. Okay, so I ask you, which of these is your go-to? What do you, if you had your tool pick, what would you choose? I'm going to let you take just a second to think about that. And another question, even though we can't interact, is are you already using some of these tools with students, and how are you doing it? So I want you to keep all that in mind as I give you some ideas of how I use it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm not going to give you all the ideas because I don't have time to, but just a few that I chose. And then you can say, oh yeah, this is what I do, or I really like the way Carmen did this, or I never thought of that, or I'm going to stick with what I've been doing because it works for me. Okay, good. And again, so Twitter's one of my go-tos. Instagram and TikTok, lots and lots of things in multiple languages you can find, and then Snapchat, the filters, need I say more? Okay, so one of my go-tos has always been Twitter. Now, Twitter's been around for a long time, and these are a few ways I use it. I use it to search for authentic resources all the time. That's what this hashtag means. I've used it with students before, whether physically using Twitter, which didn't happen very often, but I'll show you how I do it in a minute. I celebrate a lot on Twitter. Again, I don't post a ton of stuff. If I do, I use the hashtag We Are Watauga. That is our countywide hashtag for our school district. So I'm usually posting something that's happening that's exciting in the classroom, or I retweet, right? That's the beauty of that. Lurking, you see something that someone else said so beautifully and you're like, yep, retweet, that's important. I didn't have to say it, but I believe the message should get out there to the people who follow me. And then I can get fast feedback. So one day I had planned to use a tool that my, I guess the firewall in my school was blocking, and I was like in a panic, you know how you do, and you don't quite have a backup like you're supposed to. And I was like, what am I gonna do? So I got on Twitter, I reached out to my people. I just put it out there with a couple of different hashtags, and within a minute, I had like 3 responses, try this, try this, try this. I was able to adjust and make it happen. So to me, Twitter's one of the fastest social media tools out there. So I've had to do that in an emergency, and it was great. And then hashtag Lang Chat, if you're still not familiar with Lang Chat, it's a great, again, you don't have to, they have like weekly meetings or maybe bi-monthly meetings. You don't have to actually sit and participate in the chat. You certainly can. Or you can just go through and read the threads of awesome world language teachers all across the world, actually, and just get some ideas that way. Okay, but with students, this is what I do, okay? So these tweets of the day, if you go to Twitter and you just search for a word like in a specific tense or a specific hashtag, you're gonna be surprised at what comes up. So my level 3 students were reviewing the past tenses, of course, in Spanish. And so I found some authentic tweets. And so I just took images of them, screenshots of them. And then they had to identify what the grammar is, the verbs are, what was the message, what was it trying to say? And then they had to compose their own tweets at the end using the same verb tense. So there's me trying to use grammar and context. I went to native speakers of the language. I got their actual words, put them in, we commented on them. I mean, we found the grammar, and then they had to tweet as if they were Penelope Cruz, Javier Bardem, Salvador Dali, and Don Quixote. And right, the beauty of Twitter also is when it first started, it offered you 140 characters, and now it's up to 280. But if you think about our beginning learners, that's about all they can say in the target language anyway, so it kind of works well. So this is them using Twitter without actually using Twitter. They could just write on the piece of paper. My colleague Savannah, who teaches right next door and is a former student of mine, she also has her level 2s, post about, or tweet about a trip they took. Again, past tense, but they do it on a large piece of paper, and then their followers, she puts them all in the hall around the walls, and then they go out with sticky notes, and they take their sticky note, they write their comment on the tweet, and then they go around, or they ask a follow-up question or whatever. So quickly, that brief presentational writing has become interpersonal. So that's an easy thing to do too, a fast way to use, quote, Twitter without actually using the app, okay? Again, this is grammar and context, adjectives. It's not like we abandoned using adjectives, of course, even though we don't do just a specific unit on adjectives. But again, students could identify all the descriptive words in these tweets with ease. And again, I got these right from Twitter just by searching for words in the target language, okay? Another thing is searching for hashtags. So this is obviously the environment. I could search for hashtag healthy foods, comida saludable, or whatever. You'd be surprised at what you can find. And so what students had to do in this case is I took these images, that match up with tweets. The students have to drag and drop the actual tweet that goes with the image. So I can totally check for understanding. It's very interpretive. I could have also given them just the image and they would have to quote tweet about it. Again, we could do this on paper. We could do this on a Google Doc. We could do this anyway like that. That's not actually on Twitter, okay? But that's how I'm using Twitter to support that short response or comment or question. If you've heard me speak before, then you might have seen this idea that I don't do all the time, but I actually do it, I don't know, occasionally because it's so much fun. I'm a huge fan of GIFs or GIFs. I say GIF. But I use a site called Prank Me Not. And I know that sounds really sketchy, but it's not. And it allows you to, your students to create fake tweets. And so then the student creates the tweet, they add a GIF to go with it. You can do this on the Google site, Google Slides, whatever. Google Slides works super fast, it's super easy. Now, again, I encourage them to create their own hashtags. We know if you speak Spanish, yo quiero duermo is not correct, but that was an effort by the student to try to use a hashtag. And I know that she, needs a little bit of help with that, but that tells me a lot. But also the fact that she took the risk, and then there's a funny picture to go along with it. So I know that she understands what she wrote. Okay, you see where I'm going with this? I also use it often with level 3 students. If we've read a short story, I might ask them to retell the story or to create a different ending or whatever, and they can use this site where they're tweeting the story of using their own words, and then they're also adding GIFs to jazz it up and make it really fun. And it is really fun, just saying. So that might be an idea of how to use, and again, I'll go back. So the site, hopefully this won't take too long to open, is called Prank Me Not, and it'll actually allow you to create a fake Facebook thing too, but I use the tweet generator, okay? Okay, and so then I can change the language, I can change my name, I put my message here. Yep, so I type and type and type and it comes here. And then you download the tweet as an image. And that's what you put up into the Google Slides. So it's so fast and it's really convenient and it's super easy. So maybe you'll like to try that. Okay, and we saw those? Great. All right, so if you have any questions about how you can use Twitter and I didn't answer it, or you still have a follow-up question, let me know. Just email me at carmenscoggins@gmail.com. We're going to move on to Instagram now. Do you use Instagram? Again, our students really like Instagram, and I don't know why. It's just not been a tool that or an app that I've gleaned onto or glommed onto. Again, I'm more of a lurker on Instagram, and I follow some famous people, which I think is also super cool that you can do, that they allow us into their lives. And so here are a couple of ways I do use Instagram with students and for myself. You can create a class account. I'll talk about that in a minute. Follow people in the target language who speak the target language. Again, search for authentic resources. It's amazing what people put out there. Have students use the template and they can use it to narrate stories. You know that Facebook and Instagram and all those have stories, and that's what kids do. They're making stories all the time. Why not use that with them? And I'll show you how in just a second. So I use Instagram to follow some native Spanish speakers, Alvaro Soler, and the students think it's cool. They like it. I can give them a list of people that I've already vetted. I do suggest if you're going to, don't just say, go to Instagram and search for, you might want to actually curate a list for them of topics or things that that interest them, or ask them what topics are you interested in, and then you go and search just to make sure they're safe, because there's a lot of stuff out there on the social media that might not be appropriate for students, right? So I follow him, and I also of course follow Jose Andres. And if you're ACTFL people, he is going to be one of the keynote speakers, and I am so pumped to go to ACTFL face to face finally after 3 years and see Jose Andres. And so kids see that. And these are the kinds of things I post on my class account. And I'll show you how I use that in just a minute. But before we do that, if you don't know the name Leslie Gran, Grahn, Leslie Grant. And you just Google her. She's got a gorgeous website. She's got an immense Pinterest boards where she has already pulled together tons and tons and tons of authentic resources for teachers in every language you can think of. And they're organized by topic, and it's just so great. Now, sometimes I go to her sites and use her stuff, but I usually just search for because I know I'm looking for something really specific, so I just type it in, see what I can find first. But during the pandemic, she began this journey of making all these resources for teachers. And I took some of the things that she found on Instagram. This is Instagram, of course. The actual posts about care and being considerate of others, and what are your emotions during this time, and what are symptoms of COVID and all that stuff. And I just created a little presentation. So this is actually a Google Doc, and my students can just, now this, you can't see my little hand behind my face, but it's got the finger there. So you can click on this, you can modify it, you can use it if you want to. Now these tweets are dated because this was during the spring of 2020, but things like that exist in any topic, really. And then students would just compose their own message underneath. So again, I was using Instagram to get the information from, but they didn't have to use Instagram to give me the Spanish back that I needed. Back to the idea of having a class account. Again, some of you might have heard me talk about this before. My class account is Senorita Skogdog. My students call me Skogdog. I don't know why, it's just a thing they do. So I had the idea to create an Instagram class account. Now I can't require all my students to follow me because, I know that some parents don't like their kids to use social media, so that's okay. But if they want to, they do, and then I'll be out and about in town, and I actually ask them to use our Instagram account to engage or to document encounters with Spanish in our community. So if they see something, they might take a picture, they'll direct message me, so they DM me, and then I post the image. So I try to keep it a little bit more secure that way. And then the kids who want to can respond. So I just ask them, do you like menudo? And of course they had to look it up because they didn't know what it was. And then they're like, oh, gross, that's, or yeah, whatever. And just things like that. And just, I might just pose a question. I can do an audio, I could do a little video, whatever. And then just see who responds. And again, I'm not requiring this, but I'm making it an option for those kids who want to still engage with the language outside the classroom, right? This is an actual template. Again, my finger's up here. You can click this and you can have this as a guide for your students. This is my colleague, Savannah. And so we gave our students an example. Obviously, we're still talking about how to describe ourselves and our friends, adjective agreement, subject verb agreement, things like that, without being explicit with grammar. And so this was the example we give our students, and then we had them create their own. So it's social media like without using the actual Instagram app. Okay. Now, Canva, Adobe, all the big boys, they have really upped their games. I'm a Canva person myself. And they have some awesome templates of how you can create your own Instagram story. So again, you can see the hand is clickable right here too, and there's my hand behind my face. And so you can click this and it'll take you straight to Instagram stories. And I'm gonna give you an example of one that a student did about our school, like a promotional school Instagram story. Hopefully it'll come up. Super easy. And again, this is learning to speak student, because kids understand how Instagram works. They know what a story should include, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't take them long to do this. There's me. Okay. So she's talking about her classes, her favorite teacher, what she needs for school, what she wears to school, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Not everything is perfect, but I'm getting all the Spanish I need, and she's using something that she's really familiar with, like Instagram. So there's another example of using social media without actually using social media, okay? All right, so that's Instagram. If you have any other questions, again, make note of it and you can email me. All right. Now it's time for true confessions. Who uses TikTok? With or without students? Okay. So I'm not going to lie. I held off getting the app for so long because I was like, that is dumb. This is dumb. I don't want to watch a bunch of people do stupid stuff, but I'm not going to lie. It is pretty hilarious. And on days when I've had kind of a rough day, or maybe there's something hard going on in the world that I just need a mental break from, I might look at TikTok like 10 minutes a night. I get why it's so addictive because I could go on and I make myself put it down after about 10 minutes. But man, the baby puppies and the kitties and stuff, and the babies and the little monkeys on there, it's worth getting on TikTok if you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so how have I used this for a little bit of levity for me and with my students? Well, you can use it to introduce new material. Well, yeah, I'll show you some examples in a minute. Comic relief, like I just said, you can show students that TikToks can be appropriate. Now, I bet your school district kind of went through what ours did last year, where there were all these crazy TikTok challenges, and then our school got damaged, and there was some vandalism and whatever. But if you explain how all these tools can be used safely, and how students need to be careful with what they put out there for themselves and for others to see, then you are still teaching them some kind of lesson about being responsible with social media. And then you can also use them as a presentation tool, and I'll show you that also. So tons and tons of native speakers are on TikTok, okay? And I find things that might help introduce a unit or a concept, like these guys are going through a list of words. They're repeating them in Catalan versus Castellano. And so my students are like, wow, they sound so similar. I understand this. I bet if I heard Catalan, I would understand. I'll be like, yes, yes. So, and again, it's fast because it's TikTok. It's not going to take long. And it's just a quick way to introduce things to them. Also, again, I mentioned comic relief. I follow certain people, teachers, comedians, whatever, and they make me laugh when I need to laugh. And they're related to what I do. I'm an educator, like you guys are, and they're funny things that happen in the classroom or whatever. And it's like, yes. So it reminds me that I'm not in this by myself, right? We're all connected. So that's one way for students and for myself. Again, this video, it looks like it's not going to show up, but it will. There you go. So again, using authentic TikToks to get information from students. Now, because of the speed of TikTok, it's fast, right? And this is just a graph that grows and changes, but these guys are speaking Spanish and it's really fast. But we would use these as interpretive activities and asking them questions, again, typically in English, just to see what they understand. And the beauty of these is that they can rewatch them and rewatch them and rewatch them because they're TikToks and they're right there, and they can be watched as many times as they need to for the comprehension to take place. And then I mentioned as a presentational tool. So Savannah and I, my colleague and I, we do some common planning. And so we were beginning to introduce actions, so verbs, and we were like, well, let's just call this segment TikToks. We didn't actually think they were going to make TikToks. That's just what we called it because they understand that it needs to be short. There doesn't even have to be any language. So they just acted out certain verbs. And then my idea is that they were going to use their iPhone to just record them and then airdrop them to me. But no, they actually put them on TikTok. And then their friends were like, what were you doing on TikTok today? And they're like, yeah, we were in Spanish. We got to use TikTok. It was pretty cool. So then it became a great advertisement piece for our department. But so you can play these on your own time because you have the access. Again, it's tinyurl/social media summer. And you can watch these at the end, but they're pretty funny. And then what we would do is once all the videos or TikToks came into us, we just made a Google slide presentation and then students had to caption them. That's how we got the students to actually use the language, and it was really funny. And then we could talk about the difference. If I'm in the video, I could say, I do this. If I'm not in the video, then I have to say he or she does this. Again, we're embedding grammar without having that verb chart in front of them. So it works out pretty well. Okay, So that's all for TikTok. I didn't go overboard, but it really has become kind of one of my favorite things, even though I never thought I would do it. Now, I don't post anything on TikTok. Don't try to search for me and be like, yeah, Skog Dog's out there dancing in the street and stuff. No, I lurk on TikTok, and that's how I use it for educational purposes and to laugh at night. Moving on to our final tool is Snapchat. Now, again, I guess a lot of people are probably on Snapchat now just because everyone wanted to create their own little Bitmoji, and that changed our lives, right? And a few things, the filters 9 times out of 10 make your skin look gorgeous. So I need all the help I can get. I just turned 50 in December. So I guess I didn't just turn 50. I'm 50 and a half now, and I need my skin to look good sometimes. Now, of course, it gives you all those distorted things too, which are pretty funny, but you can use the map. I'm going to show you that in a minute, the new texting app, and then the actual app itself can be a QR code scanner. So if you need kids to scan codes and they don't have a device or something to do that on their computers, you can just have them use Snapchat and it'll work. But let's talk about the map, okay? Now, first thing I'll say about this is you got to be careful, because if I click on this, it's going to take you, it's map.snapchat.com. Again, this is something only I would use, that I would set up, I would prep the students, okay? So let's say I want to come down here. Maybe I want to go to Argentina. I don't know. And as the country comes into focus, man, nobody's on Snapchat in Argentina. Okay, let me come back out of Argentina. Let me come back out. Let me go to Spain, because that was where I was going to go. And then I was like, no. So let's go to Spain. We're going to go to Europe. Over here. Okay. So there's always a lot happening, and there's always a lot happening in Barcelona. I'm not going to lie. But what you can do is, let's say you want to make a point, you're introducing something, you just go in, and then all this means, this is where people have very recently been on Snapchat or are currently live on Snapchat or whatever. And then you can tap into them doing different things in the city. Maybe they're showing La Sagrada Familia, or they're walking through Las Ramblas or whatever. Again, this is something you need to vet. You don't need to just do this live in your classroom, because what happens if they're on a nude beach or something? Now, that could be cool, but you might also get fired. So I would suggest you just be careful. It is fun. The kids are like, wow, that's happening right now in Spain. I'm like, that's right. So it is kind of an interest drawer for your students, but you need to make sure you check it first. So that's Snapchat Maps. I used to use this as a way to make myself reflect at the end of each day. I would just put on a lovely filter, and then I would just talk about the day. I only did this for about maybe 3 months, and I haven't done it in years. And every time I talk about doing this, I think, man, I'm going to go back to this, because first of all, it made me reflect at the end of the day. Second of all, they're hilarious to go back and watch and try to remember what was happening during the time. But it was just a fun thing for me to do. And again, I'm using this for me. Sometimes I have to remember to take care of myself. And this is one of the ways I did it. You can watch these videos on your own too, or right now. Okay, they're just funny. And now this one's going to play. This is one of my favorite ones I've ever made in my life. Well, I'll play it.
Man, what a long day. It's only Tuesday. Got a lot more to do this week with the kids. Getting ready to go to school next week. Gotta keep my game face on. Here it is. Game face.
Okay, so you get the idea. Just really funny stuff. And I've also used Snapchat, the filters, to create memes. If you use the tool Quizzes, right? You know that one? It's like a formative assessment tool. It's like all the other Kahoots and all those games. You can, if the kid gets the question right or wrong, a meme pops up, but you can make your own memes. And so that's kind of how I used the filters. You can have kids make memes with the Snapchat filters, whatever suits you. This year, we actually had our students open up Snapchat. Again, they thought this was the greatest thing because we let them use it in the classroom. And then they took a bunch of pictures with all these different filters, and they airdropped them to me. And then I made a presentation. And then again, we just used it as a warm up the next day. Oh, you are bald. Yes, I am bald. He is bald. Again, we're using that the words that we know how to use in a funny way, though, and they thought that was great. Of course, I have some lovely ones of myself that we used to talk about. It was fun, though. It was good. Again, so here's another way you might want to use that's more like the actual social media. You can have stories. And so we found a site, and if you click on this image, it's going to take you, it's called Zoob, I guess that's how you say it, but it lets you actually create, or it would let your students create an interactive Snapchat conversation back and forth. And it just populates over here, and then they can save it as like an image. So the way we used it, obviously you could do it with whatever topic you're doing, anything, whatever grammar point you're doing, whatever, it would work. Okay. We had our students watch an animated short called Mr. Indifferent, and I ran it through Edpuzzle, which allows you to embed questions along the way. So they had already done some questions about Mr. Indifferent, and then they had to be Mr. Indifferent in their Snapchat conversation, and then they picked another person from the video, and that's how they ran the conversation back and forth. So that was kind of a cool way to make sure they remembered those very basic early on questions. You're like, where are you from? How you doing? What'd you do yesterday? Those kinds of things in a fun way. And so we were able to do that, and it was really a lot of fun. But the sky's the limit. Whatever you wanted to talk about, whatever you would normally talk about. Again, one of the biggest things about teaching a language is giving the students something to talk about that they're interested in talking about. Otherwise, what's the point, right? What's real world? Just let them choose. Maybe they create their own. Okay, so those are the tools. We talked about how we use TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and what was the other one? Snapchat and Twitter, Twitter. Okay, we're back to that thing that I'm calling the choice board. That's really more like things to consider. Now you've seen the way I use those 4 tools with students. Hopefully something struck your brain as like, yes, man, I could do that with this unit. I could do it with this lesson, whatever. So when you get to the activities that I've prepared for you, just, consider, keep these things in mind. What interests your students in the first place? Is this going to be easy? Don't make more work for yourselves. Is it relevant? I cannot change the task. I can't change if I'm using an authentic resource. I can't change that. I just have to change the way I manipulate it. Does it support my learning targets? That's got to be first and foremost. If you know anything about backward design, you pick your learning targets first, then plan your assessment, and then you plan your learning experiences. So that's got to be key. Can you use it for differentiation? And a lot of that is differentiation. It allows for differentiation because that kids are at all kinds of levels in your class, but maybe what I can give you is less or more than what another kid can give you, but we're still giving as much as we can. That's differentiation, whether you know it or not. And having these open-ended kinds of social media-like tools is not only going to motivate your students, but it's going to let them shine and be comfortable with something they already know how to use, and they'll give you what they can because they understand the concept of the tool itself. And then what's your comfort level? Okay, so again, reminder that yes, TikTok can be used safely and it can be really funny. All right, let the filters inspire you in Snapchat. Twitter, sometimes less is more. You might want your students to write these grandiose paragraphs, but why? Because then you got to read them all. Consider limiting what you have them write to 280 characters. It's faster. You still get information from them. It's much easier to grade, right? You use Facebook to celebrate, and Instagram. You can create shared experiences, shared stories. And that is all. And so if you have any questions, again, email me at carmenscoggins@gmail.com. You can follow me on Facebook if you would like, or on the Twitter, or on Instagram. And this is my personal Instagram, so this is a little different than my classroom account, okay? And then again, don't forget that the tiny URL is Social Media Summer. And most of all, it is summer. So don't forget to take care of yourselves. Maybe you've already gone to the beach, you're planning a big trip. Maybe you're leaving the country for the first time since COVID. Just whatever you do. I know you're in PD and you're learning because you care so much about your kids, and I applaud you for that. It is our summer, and the fact that we don't stop working just says a lot about the kinds of people that we are. But do take some time for yourself. Use social media if it feels comfortable for you. Use it if you think it'll work for your students in language production. And don't forget to go out there and post, chat, share, like, and love social media. And again, I thank you for your time, and I wish you a fabulous summer. Thank you.